The story is about a wealthy businessman named Kim Min-kyu, who suffers from a strange disease. Whenever he gets in physical contact with another human, he starts having terrible rashes on his body, followed by shortness of breath. In extreme cases, he can even faint or die. Min-kyu's biggest wish is to have a girlfriend, but due to his illness, he can't approach women, a likely excuse. And because of the same reason, he has isolated himself for 15 years in his house. His personal doctor, Dr. O, is his only confidant, who has tried several ways to find a cure, but to no avail. Hence, one day, he tells Min-kyu to accept his solitary life and hands him a smartwatch that uses colors to monitor his allergic condition. Blue is normal, yellow represents a mild reaction. Orange means that Min-kyu's airways are closing, and red means that he will die in minutes, a severity that he's never experienced. One day, a genius scientist named Professor Hong contacts Min-kyu. He reveals that he, along with his team, is succeeded in developing a highly intelligent robot that is capable of helping Min-kyu with his household chores, and since she's not a human, she will not cause any harm to him. The cost for this robot is $100 billion, $100 billion. Min-kyu feels like this is a scam, but out of curiosity, he goes to the lab to meet with Professor Hong. And as soon as he reaches there, he is welcomed by a robot that looks exactly like a beautiful woman. She introduces herself as Aji-3, a highly advanced AI robot created by Professor Hong. Min-kyu is stunned by her appearance, and when he touches her, there is no abnormal change in him. Excited by this new discovery, he immediately expresses his desire to buy Aji-3 and even invests funds in the project. But first, he wants to test the robot tomorrow. Unfortunately, that night at the lab, disaster strikes. One of Professor Hong's team members clumsily spills a droplet of soda in Aji-3's core processor, causing it to short-circuit. The professor and the rest of the team are devastated, as it may take several days to repair the robot. And since their deal can be cancelled if Aji-3 is not delivered to Min-kyu the following day, Professor Wang is forced to think of a new plan. He remembers that his ex-girlfriend, Xia, who is revealed to be the prototype of the robot Aji-3. Since Wang built the robot exactly like her, he goes to meet her. Both of them have an awkward reunion. And realizing that Xia is experiencing financial difficulty, he offers her a salary of 10 million yuan if she agrees to disguise herself as Aji-3 for one day. Xia doesn't want to do a favor for her ex, but since she's in dire need of money, she agrees to the offer. Following this, Professor Wang takes Jia to his lab and shows her the robot. Then all the scientists team up and help her disguise like Aji-3. They fit armor in her body, put a new wig on her head, and even give her contact lenses. These lenses will actually function as cameras, which will help the professor and his team monitor everything via the real Aji-3 robot. They can also send instructions which Jia will receive from her lens in the form of text or videos. The next day, Xia is sent to Min-kyu's house as scheduled. But when he opens the box, she jumps back in surprise. It turns out that she has met him previously when she worked as a food delivery girl. The experience was very bad, as Min-kyu tried leaving without paying her. But in reality, he was just trying to avoid physical contact with her. A likely excuse. Taken aback, Min-kyu immediately calls the professor and demands to know what's going on. Fortunately, the latter makes up a story that Aji-3 has two modes: operational and friend mode. Operational mode is where she acted professional, while in friend mode, she acts more like a human. The robot is now in friend mode, but it can be changed to operational mode by pressing the reset button. The naive Min-kyu immediately believes this, and presses the button behind the robot's neck to reboot. After Xia returns to normal, Min-kyu decides to conduct an intelligence test on her. Just then, the lab power gets cut off, resulting in Xia losing total connection to the Aji-3 system. Now she has to rely on herself, but her IQ is only 94. At first, Jia is asked to unlock a box whose password can only be found by solving a complex calculus within 3 minutes. Obviously, she doesn't know calculus, so she simply breaks the box open, which takes Min-kyu by surprise. Then she is asked to peel an egg without using tools within 10 seconds. Having worked in restaurants previously, she easily completes this task. Min-kyu is really impressed, so he praises the robot for being smart and creative. Jia, who has never been praised for being smart, gently smiles. Meanwhile, the lab electricity also comes back on, but when they connect to Jia's lenses, they are shocked to see her yelling at Min-Kyu. She's accusing him of being a pervert. It turns out that Jia is outraged to find him staring at her chest, which he notes is bigger than it was the day before. He wants to open her up to check the battery pack and extends his hand to her chest. A likely excuse. The professor drops to his knees in horror and is barely able to answer when Min-Kyu phones. "Who are you trying to deceive right now?" Min-Kyu demands. But they're relieved when he actually only accuses them of using cheap batteries, making Aji3's chest swell up. Hong stutters for a while and lies that he simply upgraded Aji3's battery pack. He also warns Min-Kyu to not touch her chest. Just don't do that. After hanging up, Min-Kyu proceeds to have his medicine, but he suddenly chokes. He drops on the floor and starts to convulse. But fortunately, Jia helps him by patting his back. As Min-Kyu comes back to his senses, he stares at the robot with astonishment. When he inquires why she helped him without any orders, Jia replies that she can do many things. After this, the two have physical contact for the first time, but surprisingly, Min-Kyu does not experience any allergic reaction. Finally, at the end of the day, Xia is brought back to the lab. Professor Hong scolds her because she was almost exposed, but Jia is annoyed because she believes that she did a good job. Frustrated that she is never appreciated, she storms out of the place. Soon, the professor receives unpleasant news that the special part they'd ordered for Aji3's repair was mistakenly sent to Africa and it is now at least 2 weeks away. To make matters worse, Min-Kyu also calls him at that exact moment and reveals his desires to take Aji3 for a month. He wants to, deep learn the robot and make it fully functional according to his needs. Left with no options, the professor calls Jia again and requests her to disguise as the robot for some weeks. This time he praises her and offers an even larger sum, because of which she agrees right away. Then, Professor Hong explains that from now onwards, until the real Aji3 is repaired, Jia will have to work at the mansion and every night she will be returned to the lab for recharging. Unfortunately, the very next day at work, Jia experiences explosive diarrhea. She tries to hold it in, but accidentally farts. Confused, Min-Kyu asks, "What's that sound?" To which the robot replies, "You fart, my master." Soon the smell spreads around the house, so she suggests that he change clothes. The gullible Min-Kyu believes her since there's no one else except them, so he leaves. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Jia rushes to the toilet to poop. However, Min-Kyu returns early and finds that the robot is missing. He looks for her all around the house and eventually finds her spraying his expensive perfume in the toilet. Jia pretends to be cleaning the toilet, but Min-Kyu doesn't believe her, claiming that robots cannot touch water. However, she lies that she is an advanced AI, who is adept at washing dishes. When Min-Kyu is about to leave, he finds that Xia's face is sweaty. He tries to approach her, but accidentally steps on some soap and slips. Jia rushes to Min-Kyu, but instead of saving him, she catches the perfume instead. Sadly, she lands right on top of him, hurting his ribs because of her iron plate. That evening, when Jia is cleaning, she accidentally knocks down the card castle that Min-Kyu has compiled for 15 years. Seeing this event unfold, Min-Kyu screams in agony. But before he can say anything more, Jia says that her battery has reached 5% and pretends to be in standby mode. He later meets the professor by saying that he's frustrated with her mistakes, but the professor tells him to give her more time to deep learn. Min-Kyu agrees to give Aji3 more time. The next day, Min-Kyu lights up to see a visitor and warns John not to come outside. It is Riel, his first love. However, his excitement soon turns to horror when Riel touches his shoulder. Min-Kyu tries to keep his face averted and manages to hide his spreading rash from Riel. He then pretends to have an important meeting and rushes back to the house. Somehow, he staggers to his off-limits room and reaches for the antidote syringe. But since he is too weak, he fails to grab them. By the time Jia finds him, Min-Kyu has collapsed to the floor, struggling to breathe. Just then, the scene flashes back to when everything was normal for Min-Kyu, back to the times when he didn't have an allergy to human touch. Little Min-Kyu's parents cheer him on as he builds his very first house of cards. When it topples down, Dad chases away his disappointment with some cool card tricks. In another memory, everyone gathers for Minkyu's birthday party. On the drive home, the entire family plays word games. But unfortunately, as Dad rolls down his window, one of the birthday balloons gets in his face and their car gets caught in the path of an oncoming truck. Minkyu next wakes up in the hospital, sobbing for his parents, both of whom were killed in the crash. I'll never look at balloons the same way again. During the day, several relatives visit him and try to become his legal guardian. The main motive is to inherit his parents' money. But when Minkyu enters the bathroom and checks his pockets, he finds a mysterious message which reads, "Don't sign anything." Later that day, a friend of his named Uchil approaches him and hands him an adoption paper. Uchil mentions that his father sent him and that it would be great if Minkyu could be his brother. Minkyu thinks for a while and eventually signs the adoption papers. Thrilled, Uchil grips his friend's hand to give him support. But when Minkyu looks down, he notices Uchil's hand turning into monstrous claws. Terrified, Minkyu runs away screaming, while strange blisters start forming on his hands where Uchil touched him. After a while, Uchil returns to his father and hands him over the adoption papers, saying that the task has been completed. But when the father goes through the last page, he sees "son of a bitch" written in place of Minkyu's signature. With this, he realizes that the kid simply wants to be left alone. Elsewhere, little Minkyu returns to his dark, empty mansion, and from that day onwards, he lives away from other humans. Feeling betrayed by everyone, he starts despising other humans, hence resulting in the allergy. To make matters worse, as he grows up, no one knows about his allergy except his personal doctor. Back in the present, Minkyu jolts awake with Jia beside him. He tells her that he was dreaming of people stabbing him in the back. However, he's surprised to find that he's in totally normal condition, with not even a mark on him. Hence, he squishes Jia's cheeks, seemingly grateful that she gave him the injection. As their relationship deepens, Jia and Minkyu spend more time together and get even closer. One day, Minkyu asks her to accompany him on a date with Riel. The date doesn't go too well, and as Riel stands to leave, she suggests that they shake hands as friends. Reluctantly, Minkyu takes her hand, which results in his allergy kicking in. Soon he starts having labored work. Breathing, and by the time he grabs his syringe, he is caught in two minds, whether to use it or not, as he is tired of his miserable life. Just then, his smartwatch starts beeping faster, and he eventually drops the syringe. Fortunately, Jia arrives and brings him to his senses. She sits next to him, and when Minkyu looks at her, his reaction lessens and the monitor returns to normal. It appears as if he is completely recovered, even without the syringe. Shortly after, the two decide to return back to the apartment. But when they are turning a corner, Minkyu accidentally collides with a gardener and falls down. The latter immediately grabs Minkyu to check if he's alright, but surprisingly, the allergies don't kick in. Seeing this, he tries to test himself by joining large crowds, something he hasn't done in 15 years. Later, as the two venture out, a child bumps Minkyu's hand, but again, nothing happens. Then the two join a crowd to watch an outdoor performance where Minkyu jumps when the person next to him grabs his hand for the wave. A check of his monitor shows that all is well. As a result, Minkyu's eyes fill with tears and he softly says, "I'm finally cured." Following this, he walks to a quiet spot and calls his personal doctor, Dr. O. But as he is tearfully confessing that his allergy is gone, a passerby bumps into him, causing his monitor to be beep voraciously. Meanwhile, Jia starts looking for Minkyu, and when the two meet, the latter's pulse slows down and his rashes start to disappear. Minkyu looks at her in amazement, and when the couple blocks his view, his symptoms return. When Dr. O asks if there's anybody nearby, Minkyu admits, "Someone is here. When I see someone, the rashes go away, and when I don't see someone, the rashes come back." However, as Jia smiles and waves, Minkyu tearfully admits it's not a person. After hanging up the call, Minkyu embraces Jia and tells her it was because you were by my side. He promises to buy the world's longest lasting batteries for her and even goes on to say, "Stay with me forever until I die. You are now my most precious treasure." As Jai stares in disbelief, the nearby crowd starts cheering for the two, prompting Minkyu to kiss her on the forehead. "No ring, though, cheap bastard." Back home, Min-kyu insists to Dr. Oh that even though he had contact with many people, he is perfectly fine. He then stands in front of his full-length mirrors while he holds up the phone to verify his claim. Dr. Oh is amazed that for the first time in several years, Min-kyu doesn't require medication after human contacts. He clarifies that it was because of the robot that's been with Min-kyu for the past 10 days and calls it a miracle. Then he tells Min-kyu to list everything that happened since the robot appeared so that they can figure out how he was cured. Over the course of the next few days, several experiments are conducted. All of them point out that Min-kyu will be fine with humans as long as the robot Jia is with him. Hence, he takes her with him whenever he wants to meet somebody and considers her the most valuable asset that he owns. In the meantime, the AG3 robot is finally repaired. It can function normally, but will require some time to adapt and make the transition smooth. Professor Hong claims that he will need some more days before AG3 Deep learns and is ready. Jia, who has started getting used to her new life, is sad about the news. One day, Min-kyu takes Jia to a fancy restaurant, but makes her sit alone at a separate table. Then he warmly receives Riel and her father. As the three interact, a clearly upset Jia looks on. After a while, when Min-kyu comes to collect her, she ignores his hand and leaves on her own. This goes on for a while. Min-kyu is safe only when Jia is around, but one day everything changes. When he is alone, Min-kyu pulls into a gas station and opens his trunk where credit cards and cash are at the ready. When the attendant returns his card, he brushes against Min-kyu's finger, but the latter is too distracted to notice and simply drives away. However, after just a few minutes, he realizes that he touched the attendant's hand and checks himself for a rash. Surprisingly, Min-kyu finds nothing, and his monitor also shows that he's normal, even though he's alone. So, he arranges a meeting with his personal doctor. On reaching the hospital, Min-kyu hugs a speechless Dr. Oh and thanks him for his hard work the last 15 years, indicating that he has finally been cured completely. After he calms down, the doctor inquires if something made him happy, and Min-kyu answers that he finally understands love. As expected, Dr. Oh assumes that Min-kyu is talking about Riel, so he suggests that he also thank AG3. He then tells Min-kyu that he can send AG3 away now, explaining that Min-kyu became attached to the robot because she was his first friend in 15 years. But now that he's cured completely, he can get more happiness from an attachment made to a human. Min-kyu protests that AG3 made him happy, but Dr. Oh calls it an illusion. He wants Min-kyu to experience the touch of someone he truly loves. That evening, a depressed Min-kyu approaches Professor Hong and reveals that he is in love with the robot AG3. Hong finds it understandable that Min-kyu has become obsessed with the first friend he made in 15 years. The one who is also responsible for his cure, Min-kyu then confides that AG3 makes him feel alive. But Professor Wong reminds him that they're talking about a robot, which was pre-programmed. Hearing this, Min-kyu admits that he is going crazy. And with teary eyes, he begs the professor for a solution. The following day, Wang comes to Min-kyu and tells him that there's one way. He proposes that they reset AG3, as this way she will forget everything and help him move on. Min-kyu is devastated, but he knows that this is the only way. Later that day, Jia also hears the news. Heartbroken, she dresses up as AG3 for one last time. The next time we see her, she stands in front of Min-kyu in his house as snow falls outside. He takes her for a walk for one last time and returns to the mansion. They finally face each other and Min-kyu tells her that the things he showed her today are parts of the everyday life that she gave back to him after 15 long years. Min-kyu then thanks her for being so many things to him, including his friend and his cure, and he apologizes again. Jia struggles to hold back tears as she expresses how thankful and sorry she is too. She only hopes that he can be happy in the coming days. Min-kyu stares at her. And as a tear falls, he manages to calmly order AG3 into operation mode. After this, he announces that he's about to reset her, prompting Jia to remind him that all of their memories will be permanently deleted. Despite this, Min-kyu agrees to proceed. But before he can press the button, he takes out his mother's necklace and places it around Jia's neck. He then embraces her and hits the button before inputting his final message. I love you. As Jia starts to count down to the reset, Min-kyu succumbs to his tears and holds her tightly. Once she reaches one, she finally lets a tear fall. Back in the lab, the Realogy 3 reports that Minkyu's folder has been deleted. That night, Minkyu and Jia cry themselves to sleep in their respective homes. Zia cries so much that she falls ill the following morning. She's taken to the hospital due to severe dehydration, and there we see that she is still wearing Minkyu's necklace. As they move on with their lives, Jia moves to her hometown with her grandma while Minkyu prepares for his wedding. With Riel. One day, Minkyu gets on the train, where he runs into a familiar face. She is none other than Jia, who Minkyu believes is his ex-robot. However, despite the two sitting next to each other, they don't utter a word. Jia is under strict orders to not react to him, while Minkyu is skeptical if she's really a robot or not. You guys know that feeling. Wasting no time, Minkyu calls Professor Wang to ask how he came up with Aji 3's face. Wang reveals that he made the robot based on someone he knew, which resembles her face, personality, habits, and so on. Minkyu wonders if it is possible to interact with her, and Wang says yes. However, he asserts that it would be best if he doesn't talk, so that things don't get awkward between the two. Despite the advice, Minkyu follows her all the way to her grandma's shop and offers to chat with her. However, she uses the excuse that she is currently busy, but, being the stubborn man that he is, Minkyu is determined to wait for her. Meanwhile, Zia hurries into the kitchen and takes off the necklace around her neck and hides it on a plate. Hours pass by, but Minkyu still hasn't left. So, Jia is compelled to interact with him. She admits that she took Dr. Hong's money 4 years ago to become a character model, but that's about it. Minkyu tries to ask more, but Jia warns him to go away. Or else she will call the police. However, Minkyu cleverly asks her grandma if she has an available room. And to Jia's horror, the old lady says yes, and lets him stay for the night. For the next few days, he bonds with grandma, which also catches Jia's attention, reminding her of her time with him. One evening, grandma asks Jia to pick up goods from a warehouse, but since it's already dark, she asks Minkyu to accompany her. Reluctantly, Xia drives him to the place. During the journey, they look at each other's faces and remember the past. Soon, Jia starts opening up. And they chat all the way until they reach the warehouse. But as they are picking up the required goods, unfortunately, someone locks the door, unaware that 2 people are still inside. Left with no choice, the couple is forced to spend the night inside, where they start bonding even more. The next day, someone finally unlocks the warehouse door and notices the couple asleep next to each other. After waking up, they return to grandma's store and help her with cooking. At one point, Minkyu almost spots the necklace, but before he can, Jia again hides it. The next day, Minkyu again arrives at the restaurant, but learns that Xia has already left. Sad, he looks for her everywhere. Until he finds her by the pier. Seeing him, Jia quickly covers the necklace, but it's too late. Because of this, Minkyu starts reminiscing about the last day when he was with Aji 3. Realizing that he was scammed, he becomes enraged. But just before he can say anything, his allergy reappears, and the indicator shows red, something which has never happened before. He falls to the ground in despair with very little chances of survival. Poor Jia is terrified, but she can only sob helplessly. Shortly after, Dr. Hong and his assistant arrive and inject him with an antibiotic. Min Xiao is then rushed back home, where he is kept in intensive care. Jia desperately wants to explain everything to him. But the doctors don't let her in. One day, Min Qiu's assistant, Jin Bai, pays him a visit. As the two talk, Min Qiu orders him to file a lawsuit against Hong's research group, the Santa Maria team, as well as Jia for duping him. Jin Bai warns that he may lose his position in the company and that his allergy information may become public. However, Min Qiu does not change his mind, but to everyone's surprise, Jin Bai forwards his resignation letter because Jia is revealed to be his own sister. Following this, Jin Bai goes to the Santa Maria lab and tells everyone to leave. On the other hand, Jia prepares hygienic food for Min Qiu, wearing proper safety gear, and starts visiting his home on a daily basis. However, every day, Min Qiu throws away the food and has a cold response. Despite this, Jia does not give up and tells him that she will be coming on a daily basis to see him. One night, Min Qiu is unable to stop thinking about her, so he walks out and stands in front of the fire with his butler. Min Chi-yu inquires whether he has also lied to him about something, to which the butler responds that there are no human beings who don't lie. The next day, Ji-ah is on her way to Min Kyu's place when a kid appears out of nowhere, causing her to have a minor accident and injure her hand. A few hours pass by, and when she does not arrive, Min Chio becomes restless. Despite not being able to arrive in the morning, Ji-ah arrives at Min Chio's house in the evening. As usual, she serves the dish for him and is about to leave when Min Chio stops her. He wonders if she did everything just to gain a competitive advantage. Ji-ah says no and admits that she has a lot to tell him. However, Min Kyo, who is not interested in hearing anything, asks if she is happy that she has fooled and duped him. He then throws his glass in anger, which upon shattering, injures Ji-ah's hand, but despite the fact that her hands are bleeding, she quietly walks away with an apology. The next day, Min Chi-yu notices Ji-ah has left some comic books for him. After some time, Ji-ah's friend pays a visit to Min Chi-yu's place and tells him that he will soon lose all of the precious gifts of his life. She reveals that the Santa Maria team, who are currently staying at her restaurant, and Ji-ah, will be flying to Australia. Upon hearing this, Min Chi-yu appears to be sad, but he pretends to be unaffected. Later, Min Chi-yu drives to Ji-ah's friend's restaurant to see his Santa Maria team members, sees them from afar and remembers Ji-ah's friend's words that he will be left with only memories. As he looks at them, one of the team members notices him and runs towards him, but Min Chio ignores him and drives away. When he gets home, he turns on the television and learns that up to 70 stars are expected to fall in the next hour. However, he ignores it and walks inside to keep the umbrella. There, he notices another umbrella belonging to Aji 3. Out of curiosity, he searches the umbrella on the internet and finds out that it is also made by Ji-ah. This brings back memories of Ji-ah kissing him under the umbrella in the past. In the next scene, we see robot Aji 3, who is about to go to Min Chio as he promised to show her the meteor shower. Following this, Min Chio drives to Mount Wangmi and waits for Ji-ah. After a while, she arrives and the two start talking. Min Chio demands the truth from the beginning and Ji-ah reveals that the person who he thought to be Aji 3 is none other than herself. She explains that he spent months with a human, not a robot. Hearing this, Min Chio is reminded of all the past memories he spent with Ji-ah, thinking she was a robot. This makes him feel dumb because he wonders how he could not distinguish between a human and a robot. He then inquires as to what else she lied about and Ji-ah responds that she did not lie about anything but only stole some food and alcohol. After this, Min Chio asks about her impressions of him when she first met him as a human. Ji-ah reveals that she thought of him as a bad guy because he didn't pay her the other half of the money. She also thought he was a psycho because he celebrated the birthday of his robot vacuum and babbled about his rank and other stuff. But after a certain point, she started to feel sorry for him and wished for his happiness. She was determined to do everything she could to make him happy. After this, Min Chio asks her to sit closer to him and tells her to open her heart. Ji-ah reveals that her heart fluttered every morning on her way to his house. She reminds him of the time he told her she was his treasure and that he wanted her to stay with him forever. Hearing this, she felt as if she were being proposed to. She also recalls several happy memories from her past and claims how happy she used to be when she saw him smile. Min Chio asks if she was scared at any point back then, to which she says yes. She reminds him of the time he said he hoped she would recognize him even if he changed. That's when she realized how desperately he meant those words. Ji-ah also tells him that she felt happy and excited when he stroked her head. She claims she didn't like it at first, but she grew accustomed to it and would miss it if he didn't do it. She then recalls the time he got drunk and wished she was human. At the time, she desperately wanted to tell him that she is not a robot. After hearing all of this, Min Sayu wants to stroke her head gently, but he remembers his allergy and backs off. When Ji-ah notices this, she puts on her sleeve head, takes his hand in hers and places it on her head. She then apologizes to him for concealing the truth from the beginning. She wanted to tell him the truth, but she was afraid of triggering his allergy. Following this, he gets close to kiss her but again holds back. He then leaves her hand and thanks her for creating a beautiful memory that he will cherish for the rest of his life. According to Min Chi-yu, he will be able to live the rest of his life with those memories. He also decides to go back to where he belongs because he will be unable to touch anyone again. He claims that their time together is over and waves a final goodbye. But before he walks away, Jia stops him, expressing that he is the one she has been waiting for and the one who has made her feel loved. She also admits that she needs him badly and confesses her love for him. Hearing this, Min-kyu approaches her and kisses her, creating a beautiful moment. The next morning, Min-kyu drives Jia to a coffee shop, and as he returns, he notices that his allergy is reappearing. But as soon as he sees Jia in his car, he regains his normalcy. Happy, he drops Jia home, hoping to see her soon. Following this, Min-kyu consults with his doctor, who claims that there is no such thing as full recovery in his case because the symptoms can vanish and reappear at any time. In the lab, the entire Santa Maria team is saddened to see AG3 go. It turns out that a rich and powerful guy named Martin has found out that they had scammed Min-kyu, so he has blackmailed them to give the robot up. We also get to know that he wants AGI-3 to be working as a weapon of mass destruction. When Min-kyu learns of AGI-3's dispatch, he rushes to the lab, but is a fraction late because Martin has already left with the robot. Martin goes to the safe where he has locked up AG3. But to his surprise, the robot is missing. Elsewhere, AGI-3 is seen walking across the street, trying to head back home, but she doesn't seem to have information about the directions. Min-kyu, who returns home and is greeted by a mini robot, Beetle. As he walks in, he notices Jia and the Santa Maria team cooking for him in the kitchen. The team members inform him that they will be leaving tomorrow and have decided to have a final meal together. Later, during dinner, all of them apologize to Min-kyu for the troubles they have caused him. They also reveal that the robot, Beetle, is their gift for him, which will help him get rid of his boredom. Hearing this, an emotional Min-kyu tells them to stay, making an excuse that it's cold outside. The group immediately obliges, hence making it one happy reunion. On the other hand, AGI-3 replays the video of Martin, which mentions that she will be working as a dangerous weapon. She also plays the video of the Santa Maria team, which tells her that she will be working as a human's friend. Confused, AGI-3 compares the two videos for a while. She then detects that Martin's video is wrong and deletes it. Back at home, Min-kyu walks to the couch where Jia is sleeping. He sits in front of her and gently kisses her hand. Just then, Jia awakens and inquires about the matter, to which Min-kyu responds that he is sad because the Santa Maria team lost AG3. She then comforts him with a hug and tells him that they will do their best to find AG3. Later, Min-kyu and Jia drive to a restaurant, where Min-kyu meets with a woman sent by Madam X. Madam X appears to be the person who has been helping Min-kyu from the beginning. The woman informs him that Martin is a top criminal on Interpol's blacklist, having committed a number of crimes including murder, fraud, and instigating arson. However, he is not held accountable due to a lack of evidence. He then advises Min-kyu to retrieve Madam X, then claims that if they are successful in their mission, they will be able to ask Interpol to put Mr. Zhang in the witness protection program. The following day, Min-kyu and Jean B meet Mr. Zhang in a restaurant. Min-kyu requests that he provide them with the evidence so that they can bring the perpetrator to justice and live happily like before. Min-kyu also assures him about his safety, saying that he will remain under Interpol's protection. After listening to all this, Mr. Zhang is finally convinced and he hands over the recording to Jean Bai, who then hands it over to the police. Meanwhile, Jia drives Min-kyu to a wealthy businessman's office, where the AGI-3 deal is about to take place. Fortunately, they arrive just before the agreement and inform them that the deal isn't happening. But when Min-kyu learns that AGI-3 has disappeared, he quickly informs the Santa Maria team. Later, Martin, enraged by the cancellation of the deal, directs his assistant to locate AGI-3 and delete all of its data as soon as possible. Martin blackmails an associate into finding AGI-3, or else his father will have to suffer. After assigning Orc to them, Martin decides to flee the country in order to avoid the cops. Meanwhile, AG3, who is unable to get back home, sits on the bench with a beggar. The beggar tells her to go away, but AG3 initiates the conversation. Slowly, the two start getting comfortable and the king beggar hands her a bus ticket so she can return home. Elsewhere, the Santa Maria team is watching the CCTV footage and trying to locate AG3, while Min-kyu, Jia, and Martin's man are searching for the robot on the streets. After some time, Martin's man finds Agi-3 entering a computer showroom. She uses a computer to find the direction to Min Chio's place and takes the bus there. Soon after, Martin's man enters the showroom and learns where Agi-3 is heading, so he immediately informs Martin's assistant about it. After a while, Agi-3 gets off the bus and begins walking towards Min Chi's house. Just then, she is approached by an uncle-nephew duo, who appear to like Agi-3 a lot. They offer her a ride home, but Martin's men stop them just as they are about to leave. They are about to take Agi-3 away, but fortunately, the cops also arrive at the scene and apprehend the bad guys. A few moments later, Dr. Han arrives and takes Agi-3 back to the Santa Maria lab. All the team members rejoice that she is finally back. Later, Min Chio and Ji-ah return home, both appearing to be relieved. After a brief conversation, Ji-ah decides to return to her place, but Min Chio stops her, pretending to be hungry. While Ji-ah prepares gimbat for him, Min Chio pulls her close and kisses her. That night, the Santa Maria team dines together and watches Agi-3's journey of going out in public for the first time. All of them are proud of how Agi-3 connected with the people. Following this, Dr. Hong informs them that it is time to change Agi-3's face, so they all wave their final goodbyes to her. The next day, Min Chio meets Madam X and hands her a pen drive containing Martin's confession video, which he obtained from Agi-3's database. Later that night, he decides to carry out such a move that number 1 will ever be able to take advantage of his illness again. The next day, Min Chio musters all of his courage and walks into the media conference, where he confesses to having a human allergy, shocking everyone. He also claims to be gradually recovering from it. Furthermore, he discusses his recent encounters and expresses his gratitude to the robot, his assistant, Jean Bai, and all his employees who helped him get through the illness. In addition, he reveals his business strategy of investing heavily in AI-based robots to assist the people in need. He also mentions Dr. Han, the robot professor who will be in charge of their project. Surprisingly, as soon as he reveals everything, the stock price of his company begins to skyrocket. Min Chio appears to be content as things are finally falling into place. He then dials Ji-ah's number, who invites him on a romantic evening stroll, but as he is about to leave, he notices Jean Bei. It appears as if the latter hasn't changed his mind about resigning, so he again requests Min Chio to process it. After a while, Ji-ah takes Min Chio out for some street food where he informs her about her brother's resignation. He wonders how he can persuade Jean Bai to stay, but she also has no answers. Later that night, Min Chio returns home and discusses it with the Santa Maria team. One of the employees believes that Jean Bai may not like working under his sister's boyfriend. However, the team doesn't have a proper solution, so Min Chio heads to his room, upset. On the other hand, Ji-ah is having dinner with her brother and sister-in-law, Hongju. Taking advantage of the opportunity, she questions Jean Bai about the reason for his resignation. When Hongju learns of this, she becomes angry and orders Jean Bai to take back the resignation letter. The latter doesn't want to change his mind, but because of his demanding wife, he has no choice but to agree. The next day, Jean Bai calls Min Chio in a coffee shop to take his resignation letter back. However, Min Chio believes that Jean Bai is only being pressured by others, so he agrees to process the resignation. He also tells Jean Bai that he will always be welcome if he changes his mind. Hearing this, Jean Bai becomes emotional and decides to not resign. The scene then shifts to a few years later when Dr. Hong announces the creation of a new AI robot at a press conference. On the other hand, Jean Bai is now the managing director of Min Chio's multi-billion-dollar company. After work, he and his family drive to Min Chio's place. Akal and Real, who are now together, go to Min Chio's house to meet him. Elsewhere, Jia is presenting some of her crafted lamps to international buyers. Luckily, the buyers are impressed with the product, and hence, they agree to the deal. And as soon as the meeting is over, Jia rushes to Min Chio's place. The same night, we see a soldier getting off the bus and walking towards Min Chio's house. As the soldier enters the gate, Ji-ah welcomes him. It is revealed that the soldier is none other than Min Chio himself. They are both overjoyed to be reunited after such a long time. Following this, Ji-ah takes him inside, where everyone is waiting for him. However, as they walk, Ji-ah slips and is about to fall, but Min-kyu holds her. The series concludes with both of them sharing a romantic kiss. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on the notification, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you.